In the final approach to the release of The Force Awakens, I felt as though now was a good time to talk about Star Wars, whereas most channels that produce videos like this seem to enjoy verbally beating the living shit out of the prequels. I have set out to discuss all the Star Wars films and include both the positives and the negatives of the films. So yes, this does mean I will be explaining why I think the prequels are good in some respects. But let's not get too far ahead. I start this series in chronological order, something that George Lucas seemed incapable of doing. In fact, the way that the Star Wars saga turned out is very similar to a family holiday where the parents get halfway to the destination, then realise they left a baby on the garden wall and have to backtrack to pick up Junior, then go back in the right direction, only this time they're taking a slightly different, possibly more scenic route to entertain the little one. Anyway, without further ado, let's discuss Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace is widely regarded as the worst Star Wars film, to which I do agree to some extent, but that doesn't mean it is a bad film. For example, I find many aspects of this film entertaining, such as the lightsaber combat, but one step at a time. One of the main reasons The Phantom Menace is considered a bad film is because of the lack of story. In case you've been living in the box for the last 20 years, or are a very close relative to the Fritzl family, you should know the plot to the film roughly, but here is a slightly shortened version. Evil money grabbers are trying to be greedy again, this time by blockading a peaceful planet called Naboo, so the government, in their infinite wisdom, have sent two ambassadors, who are actually badass space warriors, to sort shit out. They arrive, get fucked over by the bad guys, surprise surprise, and escape to the oppressed planet below. After meeting the Queen of the World, they decide to take her to the home of the government to get help. They escape the planet, but in typical action movie drama, they get hit, not so bad as to blow up there and then, but just so bad enough that they are able to make it to a certain desert planet that we all know and love. They land there, and pretty much instantly meet a kid who is far too clever to be a normal kid, and so even after they leave, the little shit bumps into them at an intergalactic spaceport, and then like a reverse Rolf Harris, he takes them home. Badass Warrior 1 soon learns that this kid is the chosen one, and said kid helps them win the parts they need to repair the ship, so they take him with them for some reason. After arriving back at the government, Queenie decides to say, "Fuck you, democracy," and sets off back to take her planet by force. With a very good plan, they use the natives as cannon fodder. The good guys make it into the palace where the greedy bastards are hiding so they can stop the occupation. However, badass warriors meet an evil badass warrior by the name of Darth Maul, and they do flips and shit. And the badass warrior master, he dies, and his apprentice avenges him and fulfills his dying wish by agreeing to train the kid. The end. So there you have it. Add some ILM special effects and Liam Neeson / Ewan McGregor, and you have the Phantom Menace. This is why the story is so shit. It's short, got no detail, and it's aimed at kids who are going to have trouble even pronouncing the words Trade Federation, let alone know what they mean. The story is just so basic and uninteresting. There aren't any major plot twists or surprises, other than the death of Qui-Gon, which is worth maybe a meh at best on the surprise scale. Other than the story, yes, the major downfall was Jar Jar fucking Binks. Even as a 4-year-old, watching it for the first time, I was not impressed by the twatty giraffe-necked floppy-eared prick. He wasn't funny, and he served no purpose to the story other than taking the heroes to the underwater city of Otogunga, where they get transported to the capital city of Theed to rescue the Queen. Yet they took the twat with them for some reason. Makes no sense at all. Lucas could have even made it so they got to the city by themselves, very easily, such as they crash in the lake, or better yet, use the Force. Yes, remember the Force, Lucas? That's what made the original trilogy better and cooler and so mystical and shit. But there's barely a mention of it in these, other than midi-chlorians, which sounds like a fucking pool cleaner. But yeah, they could have used the Force to sense like loads of life forms underwater or something like that. People may say, why not just bypass the Gungans altogether? And yes, the Gungans do look like a giraffe fucked a frog, and they all sound like they suffer from autism and Down syndrome, but they are semi-useful blaster sponges at the end, and I do kinda like the idea that they brought back the Ewok against the Empire vibe, the technologically advanced bad guys getting beaten by the primitive tribes. Well, I say primitive, the droids may have had blasters and tanks, but the Gungans had Master Chief's bubble shield on steroids. Another redeeming factor I feel is the CGI. Do I think there is too much CGI? Quite possibly, but at the end of the day, it does add to the whole spectacular, futuristic, sci-fi feel on places such as Coruscant. And considering the film is from 1999, and it was only in 1993 that Jurassic Park was considered groundbreaking, with about 20 minutes worth of rendered dinosaurs, only 6 years later ILM was making entire worlds and environments with CGI, such as the invasion of Theed, a scene I feel that was highly underrated, because it did look pretty cool in the end. Another big thing is the lightsaber fights. These are so much better than an old bloke in a set of robes and a Scottish guy in a bulky suit prodding away at each other with glowing sticks. They are very obviously highly choreographed, but they do look pretty good. Who doesn't love Ray Park, eh? I do think there could have been more towards the Force powers side of things used in the lightsaber fights. You know, they had a grand total of a force push, a couple of force jumps, and a force pull and a lightsaber, and that was it in terms of the force. I feel as though this film suffered from the same problem as the game Watch Dogs. The game was announced back in 2012, and it was set back more times than the agreed debt payment deadline, and by the time it was released in mid-2014, people's expectations were just too high. That was the trouble with the Phantom Menace. After 15 years without Star Wars, the fanboys were growing restless. They were expecting something along the lines of free hand jobs from an 18-year-old Carrie Fisher inlay slave outfit. Many may argue that someone like me, who was born in 1997, was more lenient with the prequels because I didn't grow up with the original trilogy, but instead grew up with the prequels. And yeah, maybe there is a small sense of nostalgia on my part, but I still think Return of the Jedi is the best Star Wars film, so that pokes a hole in that logic. Okay, so that wraps up my first ever video, and I now leave to make a dash to B&Q to buy £140 worth of plywood, nails and padlocks to barricade my home for the inevitable attacks from the Happy Foundation due to my comment on Down syndrome and a horde of 40-year-old fanboys because I didn't call the Phantom Menace every slur under the sun, then set a copy of it on fire and beat it with a limited edition Darth Vader lightsaber and make sure that Han shot first.